I had somebody comment on one of my Epstein videos saying something along the lines of, why is all of this information being released? Has anybody asked the victims about this? Does anybody know if they want this out there? And I think that this is a comment that comes from a genuine place of concern and love for the victims. It comes from a very uneducated point of view. And when I say uneducated, I don't mean that they are literally stupid and uneducated. I mean, they just don't know a whole lot about the Epstein files and the legal battles that took place. So I have gone in depth on my YouTube channel about the legal battles, the legal issues, things like that, but I haven't really gone as in depth here on TikTok. So that's on me. It's kind of hard to balance content between both platforms. But let me explain to you why having this information out there is so important to the victims and why they actually encourage it. In the legal battle that took place once victims were identified, once the investigation was disclosed to the public, there were a lot of issues. Most of them surrounding the victims themselves, and they were done massive injustice after massive injustice. In particular, their rights were violated when it came down to Epstein's plea deal. They were not notified that Epstein was going to take a plea deal, and therefore were not able to represent themselves in court and say whether they agreed with it or not. In other instances regarding the plea deal, the victims weren't even asked what their input was, if they thought it was fair, etc. And on top of that, those who did provide their input were completely ignored. Now, the plea deal was restitution, registration, and 2 years of jail time. And there were victims that specifically told the U.S. Attorney's Office, hey, if he can get more jail time as long as I don't take restitution, then I don't want restitution. I want this man behind bars. And what they wanted was completely disregarded. In fact, this type of stuff has been around for a very long time, but nobody really believed that it was happening because it was so absurd and something like this hadn't really been documented before. So it was sort of like, oh yeah, can you listen to this crazy woman over here? Nobody believed them anyways. On top of that, their voices were silenced in a lot of ways because the U.S. Attorney's Office stated that nobody was going to really believe them anyways, and they didn't want to take the case to trial, which is why they forced the plea deal the way that they did. So up until this point, everybody who was supposed to be representing the victims fundamentally failed them and didn't care what the victims wanted or what the victims had to say anyways. A lot of it was designed to keep it as quiet as much as possible. Finally, it got to a point where I think a majority of the victims were like, screw it. People need to know what happened. So a Netflix documentary came out a couple years prior to when it really hit the media and blew up as far as news goes. And on top of that, victims have been at the White House, have been speaking out, have been really pushing for the Epstein files to be released because they want people to know what happened to them. They want people to know the injustice that was done to them by the federal government and the bullshit plea deal that they gave Epstein. The fact of the matter is that up until this point, nobody actually gave a shit about the victims. And so they took matters into their own hands and said, okay, cool, if you guys don't care about us, we're going to put all of this out there and the public's going to give a shit. And that's pretty much what happened. So the idea of, well, the victims don't want this out there is incorrect. The victims do want this out there. They've been talking about it extensively for a very long time. They've really been pushing the movement and demanding that Congress steps in and releases the Epstein files to the public because they know that a vast majority of the public is going to want to hold people accountable, whereas before they relied on the justice system and the justice system failed them. So again, I do think that comment came from a place of genuine care. It's just very out of touch with the facts of the case and what's currently happening pertaining to the Epstein victims. Now, do I think that if there's certain victims that don't want their information out there, should that be respected? Absolutely. I think every victim should get a choice in whether they want the specific details of their case pushed out to the public. Everybody's top priority should be that they don't want to re-victimize people. Some individuals, they want to keep that private, and I can't blame them for it. So as far as that goes, I do think it's important that, the government do its due diligence and get in touch with everybody that is a victim pertaining to the Epstein files and ask them, do you want this information released to the public? And if that victim says no, I think they have every right to withhold that information from the public. I am a firm believer of that, but this idea that none of the victims want this information out there is just incorrect and false.